Hello, everyone, and welcome to. We have a title for this.
Still Skeleton Crease
Star Wars Wednesday
here. Let's talk about the Star
Wednesday.
Wars Unlimited trading card game. Big news from Fantasy Flight Games, Asmodee, etc., etc. What's up, everybody? How you doing?
If you're watching this, you're probably watching it later.
Well, no, we had the schedule
people
thing, so
were
there's a lot of
there.
people in already.
Yeah, we hope.
Yeah, it's called marketing.
We hope they were there. Let me pull up my chat feed real quick.
I'm glad you're here, everyone. No, we don't have a pre-production sample of the game at all. What we are going to do is we're going to talk about the Star Wars Unlimited new card game announcement. Obviously, it's relevant to Zach and I, to Covenant in general, because we grew up playing all these different Star Wars card games, which Zach has lovingly brought today. So we're going to do a quick history of the Star Wars card game space in case you're new to Star Wars card games and aren't fully aware of everything that's going on in the history of that, which there's a lot going on. There's a lot of drama, a lot of interest, a lot of intrigue, a lot of license passing, a lot of those kinds of things. We also have the announcement, which gives us very little info, so we're free to speculate, of course, at will, which we certainly plan to do.
Man, they gave us just
enough, right?
Nothing.
And then we've got some updates as to Covenant, some of the things that are cracking on our side that are going to impact the content moving forward, and some of those things. But we'll save that until the end, so that the real diehards get the information about us, because most people will be here for information about Star Wars Unlimited.
All right,
we're gonna kick it off. Zach, hit me.
So you want to start with history? You want to start with the announcement? Where are we starting?
Start with the announcement. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So what did it say and what
yesterday
happened?
morning, I was at home, about to leave for work.
Good.
Come here to the office.
All right, I'm gonna put this over here.
And all of a sudden, my phone is blowing up, man.
All of a sudden, Discord said, what?
Yeah, my Discord, I was getting text messages. I was getting messages on, like, in my inbox on Discord, on Twitter. People were just going crazy because Fantasy Flight Games has announced Star Wars Unlimited, which is a TCG, collectible trading card game, etc., coming out in 2024.
Basically, a card game in random booster packs. TCG, CCG,
right.
All of that. Yeah.
Yep. And there's a whole website. So I went to the Fantasy Flight website, and they linked to this separate website called StarWarsUnlimited.com.
Good.
And the only thing there right now is the press release article. And this is actually what I was reading. But apparently there was an article on Polygon as well.
I read that one, yeah.
Which I have now read. But at the time, people were saying, like, oh, it's been, some of the designers on it are Tyler, who I knew, who played Star Wars LCG with me.
Tyler Perot?
Parrot?
I may be Parrot. I don't know. I just said Perot.
But I played Star Wars LCG with him. That game came out almost a decade ago now. Or a little over a decade. And he got hired, and I think his first development work was actually on L5R.
It was post-design. So it was after L5R
Development,
had started.
Design.
And then he got brought on to keep it going.
It's important to note, design is the core game itself, the rules, that stuff. Development is designing pieces for the game, cards, etc. But he started there, and I saw him post on Facebook. Obviously, a dream come true for any designer. If you grew up a Star Wars fan and a card gamer, designing a Star Wars card game and having your name on the box, as it were, is like a lifetime achievement. So that was really cool to see. I love Tyler. He's a great person. Really good designer. So that's cool. Other person that I knew on the list, actually I knew 3 people on the list technically, but the other person on the list in this announcement, so it's the Polygon article. The people were like talking about this. I was like, where are you getting this information?
Yeah, they got some scoops.
The Polygon article is more of an interview. And they're asking questions, and there's a lot to talk about there. But going back to the designers, which I think is notable to hit, another person on the team is Jeremy Zorn, who is like 5-time FFG world champion at different games. Yeah. It's like Netrunner, first world champion Netrunner, right?
Yeah, I think that was one of our first Netrunner matches we posted.
Yeah, and then Conquest, and then Cthulhu.
Disgusting at Conquest.
Just like, yeah, and I love Jeremy. He actually came out to our last major Destiny event we hosted before the pandemic. Which was the finale to our Covenant Master Series, with this big, long qualifying thing. He came down, we previewed some stuff.
Also, a Wonderkin at karaoke, which of course,
absolutely,
yes,
he's a killer at karaoke. But Jeremy, great person, and also one of the smartest people on the planet.
Yeah,
and especially at card games, like he's so good to me to have on a design team, because from a player perspective, he is just unbelievable. He's one of the best card game players of all time. And then on top of that, the final designer for Netrunner was also a part of this. Dan, his name Daniel for his last name.
It would have been the announcement. I'll look it up.
Hold on. I want to get.
Yes,
this
I
right.
do. We spoke with him.
Yeah.
Man, it feels like ancient history back in those days.
Daniel Schaefer. Danny Schaefer. It's
yeah.
Danny
Danny
Schaefer.
Schaefer.
Is the real name.
Danny Schaefer.
Who was the lead on Game of Thrones?
Yes.
The LCG at the end, towards the end of that whole cycle.
I feel like he and Tyler are pretty similar, and they kind of got thrown into those games midway.
Yeah.
In their
like a pretty
life cycle.
Honestly, I think a tumult. So this leads to the next topic for me. So all that to say, there's 3 very notable previous FFG designers that have been put on this project, which makes a lot of sense. Apparently, they've been working on this for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then there's actually another person. I think the person being interviewed, his last name is, I haven't met this person as far as I know, but Cartwright is the name that sticks out to me.
Is it Jason?
Let me see if I can find it.
Cartwright?
Jim Cartwright.
That's right.
So you have this whole team, Star Wars card game being developed. Other tidbits that are really notable is all new art. So
yeah, that is really notable.
They have a huge backlog of art. So like I have this Star Wars Destiny, another game that we played. The last deck in the game that I really loved was my Raylo deck. It's just they have all this art, and the same with the LCG. I mean, there's so many pieces of art that they own.
I'm gonna see if Jim is in the designer database.
And they made the decision to do all new art, which is notable because I feel like that art is one of the most expensive parts of this whole process. At least signifies a certain commitment to this product.
I said in the Discord that doing all of the art like they're doing is, as far as I can tell, like that is the most FFG thing that has come out of FFG in a while. You know what I mean? Like if you look at FFG as a brand, and after all the tumult and Christian leaving and then Andrew leaving and a lot of the design team leaving and getting swallowed up by Asmodee and this kind of whole vibe, an FFG game should have all original art like this. That feels like a very FFG decision to me, and I'm very glad that that's the case, as compared to a cost-saving decision that you could easily have from years and years of art that already exists.
Yeah, because you could decide to do this because, like, well, we have the first 3 years of art.
Yeah.
So it's really a lot easier for us to make a game like this instead. And it seems like from the one little piece of art that we have, it feels very much like the Star Wars comic books to me. Like it's leaning that direction, which is kind of cool because when you look at the backlog, which we have a lot of those in front of us, of Star Wars card games,
yeah,
it's usually either just like screenshots or it's all the previous FFG art, which had a certain, like that, it's that 2010s with Game of Thrones. They had the same style, a lot of the same artists. Which is, I like that style.
Yeah, it's cool to see a re-rendering of things that you've seen in real life.
Yeah, but then switching over to seemingly a whole new vibe for the game, I think is very smart.
More comic book style, right?
Yeah,
seems like a comic
for them to be doing. But in particularly the Polygon article, and this is I have a lot to say. I'm a huge Star Wars fan my whole life. I played as lightly as calling it. Basically every Star Wars game that I could.
Yeah.
Card game especially over the past 25 years. And really the Star Wars TCGs where we started.
Yeah.
We started kind of with Pokemon, but the Star Wars TCG from Wizards in 2002 was really where we got in, like on a real level.
And then later we got in deeper to the Star Wars TCG. Let's do a rundown. Yeah. Let's take a tour of Star Wars card games so that we can have some context for how we should understand this announcement. Let's take it to the tape here.
Yeah, I nailed it. Look at that.
Yeah, dude, perfect centering. I love it.
Yeah, I'm just sliding this over. So I just have a smattering of
bright enough?
Different things here
Nice.
from our past and from the past of these games. And honestly, like so many of my best memories in life are tied to these games and these decks and these moments. So it was pretty crazy last night. Steven asked me if I could just pull a sampling together from the many games that we have played over the years. And so I was putting these decks together and stuff, and I have a lot of these in a position where I can pull them out and play them against people because, or use them just from a usability standpoint. It's really cool.
Let's start where it all started.
So it all started with the Star Wars TCG, which is up here. And these cards here are also from that. And this is the OG.
This is Decipher, baby. It's where it all started.
Magic
they got
comes
the rights.
out.
They did it.
Magic's very popular. It comes out in 93. Then a Star Wars card game comes out. And we were very young this time. Kind of missed the whole boat on this, like my personal interaction with this. And I'm gonna go forward, then come back. But the game that came out immediately after this is the Star Wars TCG, which are these decks here. And effectively, I didn't know this at the time, but the feeling inside the Star Wars TCG community, this was, as far as I know, like the second most popular CCG at the time.
Absolutely.
And it was growing.
Yeah.
And the prequels were coming out. It was like an exciting time.
Now, some would say, though, that over time it got really, really complex, dense, etc. And Reflections kind of came out to try to remedy that. It was not exactly just like a clear shot to, oh, this game is the next great.
But it was growing.
And it was beautiful.
And it was very popular. Like they were doing quite well in like a, who knows, right?
It's a game you'll never forget if you play it.
Yeah, it is 90s card game through and through, from top to bottom. But apparently, Wizards of the Coast, who had made Magic, got the license for Star Wars. And so
here's a little context for that too. Mm-hmm. You want to know something? I looked up some things. So first of all, Decipher did the CCG. They also did Young Jedi, and they did Jedi Knights. So
which I do own those as well. I just didn't have them in this.
They were in like the deep basement.
Well, they're just like not built for like decks, and like they're not sleeved, and it's like a whole
thing. We haven't. I don't think I've played either of those. But I think Young Jedi was trying to go after the kids, so Pokemon, etc. I don't know. Jedi Knight was weird. I think it had computer-generated Star Wars art.
100%.
Strange.
Yep.
Decipher was wiling out. But
that was also around the time they were doing these kind of things.
Yeah, Boy Crazy, of course. Is notable. So they had the license, and they spit out a number of games, Star Wars CCG being the biggest. Now, meantime, as I understand it, Hasbro locks in a deal with Lucasfilm to produce the toys, the Star Wars toys. So Hasbro is rolling around in Star Wars and has a lot of connections with Star Wars, making that kind of merchandise. I believe that was like 97, 96 when they really started pushing that.
Yeah. And 99 is when episode 1 comes out.
99 is episode 1 comes out. When does Hasbro acquire Wizards?
So that's a good question.
I think it was 2001. Is that correct?
1999.
So it was 99. And when does Star Wars TCG come out?
2002.
So in my brain, Hasbro has deals with Lucasfilm to make this very successful line of toys. Hasbro acquires Wizards of the Coast. A year or two after, Hasbro, through Wizards of the Coast, gets the license of the card game.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the connections that were made in the toy space, they were like, well, why not put more stuff under the Hasbro umbrella? We have those connections, we have those relationships. They think they can do it better. They have Magic the Gathering. It's the most successful card game on the planet. Why not give the license to them instead? And I believe that's what happened.
Yeah, and as far as I know, too, obviously money's involved. And so it's like, who's willing to pay more?
Some would imagine.
Hasbro's in a much better position to pay more for this thing. For obvious reasons. But the general sentiment in the Star Wars CCG community is, you can imagine if you were playing a game that you loved and it was successful and it was growing, right? And it's how, anyways, you can imagine being in that position. And then all of a sudden, they have to announce basically, hey, our license is ending. This is going to be the end date. This game is going to be over. We're no longer going to be able to do this. So,
and tidbit there, Decipher later releases the Wars CCG, which is the Star Wars TCG without the Star Wars.
And with things cleaned up and fixed that it's kind of like a 2.0.
And it's a fantastic game, but it just...
Then they would later succumb to internal...
Guy's brother fraudulently steals all the money out of the company or something.
Yeah, it's a whole unfortunate scenario.
It's really
but
unfortunate.
The Star Wars TCG comes out, and then we get interested to do it. We fall in love with it. Incredible game, designed by Richard Garfield. Wizards puts it out. All about it. Have no idea. All I knew about this game was when you go to Vintage Stock or you go to the game store, these packs are 99 cents.
Yeah.
And you buy a pack and you look at this card and you're like, what does this even do?
Yeah.
Compared to some of these cards, right? And like, so during that time, I would occasionally just buy these random old packs. At some point, I remember me and my good friend Will, for his birthday, which was in July, his mom took us up to Vintage Stock, and like I had $20 and he had like a bunch of birthday money, and they had discounts on old Star Wars CCG things, and it was like, oh, it'd be really fun if we like really tried to learn how to play this. So for $20, I actually got a lot of stuff at the time because they were just trying to get rid of it. Yeah, like it was just old dead game, right? But this game comes out, it's actually met with like a lot of friction.
All the Star Wars CCG player base says Wizards came in with a bunch of money, stole the license. We're not playing this game.
And this game comparatively is way more streamlined. The games are 15 minutes compared to an hour and a half. the like granularity of what you can do and how it works is lower. It's also mostly at the beginning based on the prequels because episode 2 had just come out. So like the first set is literally Sith or Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
And so everyone that just wanted like Darth Vader and classic Star Wars was not happy about this. There's dice, there's D6s involved in this card
everybody
game.
who wanted the CCG was just mad.
I can imagine.
It is maddening. The sad part about that is this is one of the greatest design games in the history of card games.
I will die on that hill.
I mean, if you don't think Richard understands how to do this by now,
it's one of the most fun card games I've ever played.
Yeah,
Still,
incredible.
We played it the other day, and it's like, what is how is it so good?
It's so good.
Yeah, people. Anyway, so that game comes out, and that actually has like a 3 or 4 year run. Devastating story. August 2005, probably. Would have been 2005. They have the World Championship at Gen Con, and they preview the next set, and then after that preview at Gen Con, in the article that goes up on Wizards' website for Star Wars, they literally never post anything ever again. No one says anything, no announcements, no thank you, no see you later, no this is not going to happen, it is going to happen. So there was like 6 months where we're like, what's going on?
Silence.
Like, are we gonna...
What Zach might not tell you is Zach Bunn, as like a 15-year-old, was writing articles for Wizards of the Coast about the Star Wars TCG, and we both qualified for the various world whatever, and then you were denied Gen Con
from a whole story.
From your parents, and that kind of launched your career also as a sort of Kylo Ren figure.
Yeah, well, I will say as a person, when someone tells me that I can't do something, I actually don't know that there's a more...
Especially when it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, when it's just like, what do you mean I can't go to Gen Con? Like, I understand if it's like...
Because dragons, Zach.
Don't put your hand in the socket.
Because dragons.
Yeah, because Dungeons and Dragons.
Because of
so then to conclude that part of the story, we went to Gen Con in 2007. We didn't go in 2008. Then we went in 2009. We went every year from 2009 to 2019. Didn't go from the pandemic, but this year we're making our glorious return to Gen Con.
I think we're going back.
But they basically just stopped the game.
They just stopped.
And have no idea what for, why, didn't say anything.
Sales
devastating.
Who knows?
And then my already like I was not a huge fan of the Magic community locally for reasons. And then that happened, and it was like, oh, I'm never doing Wizards ever again.
Yeah, Wizards of the Coast. We get what you are. We're out of here. Yeah,
we're gone.
And then we proceeded to play all sorts of weird games until now.
Yeah, and so that was like 2005, and then we go to college and we get into all kinds of weird games. But to come back to the Star Wars lane, 2011.
Yeah, so we're in a pretty long period of time with no Star Wars card game at all.
Right, no of any kind. So 2011, we find out, and we posted a video to our YouTube channel, and it's me and Robert talking about, I think it was 2011, it may have been 2012, Lucasfilm acquired by Disney.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, Star Wars is coming back, because there's no movies. Like, there was a Clone Wars, which was amazing, but like it was like kind of just dead.
Yeah, well, It was tastefully in retirement, I would say.
Yeah. Anyways, Disney acquires Star Wars tastefully in retirement in a good conclusion.
Not brought out into the back and just wailed on
and at that point, Disney is kind of in the height of. I'm not sure when they acquired Marvel, but I know the whole Marvel thing's going on. It's like, there's this idea that you can have this kind of really expansive, ever-growing story and media base and IP. But it gets acquired, and then Fantasy Flight Games in August 2012 launches Star Wars X-Wing, and Netrunner, which is one of the craziest Gen Cons I've ever been to. And then X-Wing goes absolutely nuts,
bananas,
and that's OG X-Wing is one of the best games I've ever played.
Easy,
not even close. But then that year at Worlds, November 2012, which is I believe when Jeremy Zora was winning the Netrunner World Championship.
That's right, off of that snare, I believe.
We're at Worlds at FFG's old location. Remember that?
Like 70 people?
It was actually, it was kind of like the sub location. They were putting us in like the warehouse next to the location.
It was literally 70, 80 people.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then I remember Steve Horvath gets up and he's talking on the microphone. And basically it's like, hey, we're doing a Star Wars LCG, living card game. So non-collectible, $15 a month packs basically is the idea. Or aiming to do $15 a month packs.
And aiming to do monthly releases.
Yeah. And he's like, hey, we're doing a Star Wars card game. Here's a copy of the core set. Also, everyone here is going to get a copy of the core set.
Yeah, he
of
opened
course,
us. Yeah.
just everyone's losing. Not everyone. I'm losing my mind.
Mhm.
That's like a new Star Wars card game. We've been playing Thrones and Lord of the Rings, so like that was pinnacle excitement. And we'd actually demoed a Star Wars LCG at Gen Con.
Yeah.
That was different.
It was like a co-op
Uh-huh.
game, and they canned it.
It disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, never to be
Maybe
seen
it's
again.
coming back here.
Yeah, well, we did see that the multiplayer is a part of the.
And they
the
said
thing.
no
Yeah.
gimmicks, you know.
So, Star Wars LCG comes out, and now Star Wars LCG has something about it and it's designed by Eric Lang as well,
Mhm.
who I've easily one of the best designers
Decipher,
of all time.
Richard Garfield, Eric Lang. Now that is those are all going to be very different games.
Yes, and I absolutely love the LCG, but it got met with a lot of criticism as well. So. Primary thing is that this game released in what are called objective sets. So you have an objective that comes with 5 cards, and you actually pick 10 objectives, and that's how you build your deck. And the idea from the interviews that we've done and or heard was that it should make deck building very approachable and very easy for people, because you just pick 10, put the deck together, and play it.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of people just on that one decision that were really critical of not having as much agency in deck building.
I would argue also that the Star Wars LCG is where Keyforge came from. That's the brain loop that gets you to Keyforge.
Yeah, it's like, how do you make card games more approachable? And if Star Wars being bought by Disney is going to get really popular and by like a mass audience, I can see where you'd want to make this card game as approachable as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I feel like they kind of got in the weird field goal zone of not approachable enough for someone to just pick it up at like a Walmart, but also you're removing the agency from the people that get really deep into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of both directions. And then also the game design itself.
The game is insane.
Is like it's the opposite of the CCG in that the CCG is very granular. And to me, this game is very abstract.
It's so abstract. It's so abstract.
Yeah.
It may as well be talk or whatever.
If you're not comfortable with gray space, this is probably not the game for you. But the people that got into this were obsessed with it. Like the ride or dies here were very much into it.
Yeah.
So that game went on for several years. In fact, it was still releasing things when Destiny came out.
Mm-hmm.
So the next layer of this saga is 2016. I remember about a week before Gen Con, FFG announces Star Wars Destiny, which is a collectible Star Wars card game. And they very prominently at the time, so 2016 is like the height of new Star Wars fever. Force Awakens comes out, super popular, multi-billion-dollar. Rogue One is coming out.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that they do is they're previewing like a Rey and a Kylo starter. And it's like all the new stuff, which we haven't seen in a card game before. Because the LCG never got there. Like it never showed any of that stuff. But they were still releasing expansions for this for like 6 to 9 months after Destiny came out, which is interesting.
And Destiny releasing is a really notable timeline for FFG because this is amid all of the booster packs. We don't need it. Collectible games aren't our thing. And then they announce a collectible game with dice, which is weird, but a collectible game at all is like, whoa, we thought you were this and now this. So there was also pushback on that announcement.
Yeah, and it's important to know at the time, like new collectible card games were not common.
Yeah.
Like that was not like today there's 20 coming out this year or more. But back then, any coming out in general, but then also the fact that FFG was doing it and they had like a decade on the back of, play the game, not the chase.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The whole thing. So that was the thing. The second part, when they made the announcement, they had these dice that you could see in the announcement, and they're big and they're chunky and they were colorful. There was yellow and blue and red. And the way it presented from the article was, at least from my perspective, it felt like it was like we're trying to make a mass market game that a 10-year-old could play and a 30-year-old can play and both have a good time.
Yeah.
Right? And so the combination of all that, they did previews at Gen Con of 2016, which we have a demo that we got and posted on YouTube and stuff. And they actually sent us home with some like beta decks to play and try and deck build a little bit. And over that next week or so, I fell in love with this game.
Yeah, we left Gen Con like, maybe. I mean, it's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then we played extensively that next week, and we lost our minds.
Yeah, it was so good.
We're like, I can't believe that this game exists. It's so incredibly good.
It is so good.
It's a miracle.
Yeah.
And did Lucas do this one from scratch?
Yeah, so this was designed by Lucas, who was the lead of Netrunner.
Yeah,
and
this is
so
Lucas Litzinger.
Netrunner originally designed by Richard Garfield. Lucas was in charge of the bring it back into an LCG format.
Did such a good job.
Which he did a great job. And then he was the lead here. And at some point in Destiny is when Jeremy Zwern would come on board to start with development. And toward the last handful of sets, I think were like almost exclusively Jeremy on the development.
I think he'd been a playtester for FFG for a while.
And he did, unfortunately, the last 5 or 6 sets of the game were the best sets by a mile.
By a country mile.
That's part of what's so devastating about this one, is that it was so good, and we'll get into that in a second. So Destiny comes out, a lot of criticism because it's collectible, and also the dice. And then they run into, like, the LCG had its fair share of things happening, like delays or issues. Like the first deluxe box was multiplayer, and they never really did anything with multiplayer.
A lot of weird decisions.
And like there were really important objectives, and there's a lot of history there. But Destiny came out, and after about a day, went to the moon. Super popular, sold out. Secondary market prices were crazy. So they actually didn't even release the second set until May of 2017.
Yeah.
It was delayed. And so I think partially so they could print more. But then the delay itself meant that there was a large period of time where people that wanted to buy it couldn't buy any at all. And the people that had already bought it had to wait a long time for that second expansion to come out. And so that, I think, put a huge damper on the would-be momentum and excitement of the game. Then throughout the history, we had several times where, like, the goal was 3 sets a year. I don't know that ever happened.
Yeah.
Like, it was continually either delayed. We also had, like, one time there was a 6-month gap between sets, and then literally 2 months later they released a set on 4th of July weekend.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which is just, like, very confusing. So it had, and the sets 2 and 3 had some very significant balance issues going on, and they didn't really have a system for it, or like we were in a 3-month meta that was pretty miserable. After the delay, we finally get new stuff, and then it's kind of just broken for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And with all these games, there's tons of slings and arrows, but in the end, the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, Star Wars Destiny, is November 2019 World Championship.
Yeah,
had like 550 people at it, which was the biggest World Championship to date.
It really got great.
The game was great.
And
and that is when they announced in 2019. So someone was asking earlier. They said they've been working on this 3 years, so let's put it in like the 2020 timeframe when this development started. At that Worlds, or right around that Worlds, when they announced that set 10 would be the last set, which wasn't out at that time. And it was really nice compared to the Wizards finale.
That was something Andrew really was big on.
Ending well.
Andrew, I remember having conversations with him. I think we even had an interview with him where he was like, we need to treat these games respectfully when their time has come, right? And just be like, this is a retirement. It's like a celebration, right? Because it's like, we talk about games dying. And so like, if you take that to its conclusion, let's have a nice ceremony and just not kind of drag them on until they can't stand up anymore. Just be like, okay, we're done with the idea of this. We think it's been completed and everything we wanted to accomplish. Thank you to all the players who did it along the way. Here's our final set, and we love you. See you later. That kind of a thing.
So the plan was, in May of 2020, the final World Championship for Destiny, featuring the final set of Destiny, and there'd be an event series leading up to it that local stores could host, which was actually how you were going to acquire this set.
Yeah.
So you could play in events, you could play at the World Championship. It's a nice, like, end of an era, finish out the game, get this final set, and off to the races. Of course, unfortunately, the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
So then the World Championship got indefinitely postponed. Set 10 disappeared. Eventually, it got leaked, set 10. Very unfortunate that it didn't come out. It was like one of the coolest sets.
It added the new dice for creatures, right?
Yeah, it was like you could playable characters like the Crate Dragon, which we would later see in the first season or second season of Mandalorian. I think it was second season of Mandalorian. It had the Mandalorian in it as well, and that's a whole. We won't even talk about set 10 of Destiny. It didn't happen. Won't happen. But ultimately, pandemic happens. We get a couple years down the road. They announce Star Wars Unlimited, and so there's beyond just the history of Star Wars card games here. Or even that, zooming in just the card games and then zooming out, is there have been multiple people with the license that have made games. And the longest run of all of these, I don't know the exact timetable. I think the Star Wars TCG probably had the longest tenure.
Yeah.
I don't, or close.
Like 12 sets?
Star Wars LCG might be the second in terms of time it was actually in
I think
print,
it was.
which is crazy. And then you have Destiny and the TCG, which are similar. And so these are all in like 3 to 5 or 6 year time frame. And so even when we take out the context of FFG and their history, which there's more to their history than just Star Wars, of course, most Star Wars card games that have come around don't last that long. And part of that, of course, is this is based on an IP that's licensed from someone else. And so it does seem Disney is more into, we will license things to you, and as long as you're making money, they don't do it in like an exclusive situation.
Yeah.
Whereas older times it would be like, oh, Decipher, you're the one person that gets to do this. And so I'm less expecting there to be a license, and FFG has had a Star Wars license since 2000, seemingly 11. So I'm not exactly expecting that to become a problem here. Like, oh, the license is going to get pulled out from under you. But FFG does have an extensive history of competitive card games that only last 2 to 5 years. And a lot of other issues. Like,
well, yeah, so here's a notable data point to you, just for context. Vast majority of card games fail within the first 6 months to a year.
Yep.
So if you're just comparing the track record of all card games and you compare FFG and Wizards and those, FFG isn't so bad. I mean, they launch. Here's the thing about FFG that I think we reverberated on whenever we first started playing Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, the LCG format, was that every single game system that FFG has put out, especially in the card game space, the spaces that I've played, I don't know about their board games and whatnot, has been wildly creative and exceedingly fresh. Yep. Everything from Netrunner and that port all the way up to L5R. L5R didn't hit for me, but Mono no Aware, you can invest resources to keep things on the board or they go away. The way the Fate system, like all of that was very interesting. The Star Wars LCG didn't hit for me at all, but God bless it, it is one of the most creative ways to make card games happen that I've ever seen. All of these games, Star Wars Destiny, you're rolling dice, which have different symbols on them, which correspond to what you can then do action by action. Each characters have these abilities. It's everything that they do is very creative, high quality on their assets, their graphic design, their art, etc. That is never the thing. And what you're alluding to is, but the logistics, the management, is the set going to come out on time? Is there going to be delays? Are they going to communicate with their player base, communicate with stores? Someone was referencing, I think Simon and David in the chat were referencing, remember that interview we did with Steve Horvath, and he was like, this is not the last you'll hear from Star Wars Imperial Assault. And of course, cricket since then. So it's those kinds of things that throughout the history of all the LCGs, there's delays. None of the LCGs had a consistent 1 month release. It didn't happen. Star Wars Destiny was plagued by problems from the start, production problems. We think a lot of that probably has to do with the dice and how bizarre that whole situation is. Try to put dice in packs. Packs are not really built for dice. But so on the one hand, I think the track record of design, creativity, innovation, nailing theme and flavor most of the time is just bar none. I mean, it's fantastic.
I think the design of the games, as you're saying, is for like a decade plus why I think FFG was so fascinating.
Yeah.
Because the designs were, even going all the way back to like Lord of the Rings LCG and Game of Thrones LCG, fascinating.
Yeah,
and
so good.
Completely different than anything else we'd ever played. Like the Thrones 3-icon system, it's about power. It's not about attacking your opponent necessarily or killing your opponent. Same with Lord of the Rings LCG, a cooperative, expandable deck building card game that you can play together on the table. Like crazy.
Yeah.
They're so not without fault, but the design of the system itself, very innovative across the board.
And that's what makes a lot of the problems that you're into outside of the game so tragic, because you're sitting here like, this is such an incredible game if people would just be able to play it and consistently enjoy it. And then the common complaint now, and these complaints are not exclusive to FFG. I mean, if you're in tabletop gaming spaces, you're going to hear complaints about communication. You're going to hear complaints about release dates and delivery. You're going to hear complaints about whether or not they get made enough supply and whether they oversupplied or undersupplied and all that stuff. This is a common theme that we all are always talking about because nobody's perfect or nailing it right because the industry doesn't allow them to, frankly. But FFG, I think it has a particularly notable reputation for being under communicative, and that's relevant whenever you're experiencing a number of failures on issues that affect players in a very direct way.
Yeah.
So when you
And
have
stores.
problems and then you're also not saying anything, it's really bad. If you're not saying anything and you don't have problems,
No one cares.
no one cares that much. Right?
But a really good example of that was the expectation set was a new set every 4 months. And then you get to that 4-month mark and it's like, hey, where's the new set? And it doesn't come for another 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
And they're not really talking about it or what, as comparison of a publisher that has been very impressive with their communication, even though there are tons of issues, is Legend Story Studios with Flesh and Blood, where they're constantly telling you, here's what happened, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, which has been exceptionally refreshing.
Yeah,
right. They're the exception, not the rule. But yeah, the issues that were met in these games not really being talked about, even little things like that meta in Destiny where things were just like off kilter.
And everyone's like, are you going to do anything about that?
Not acknowledging it, not talking about, not like we have our eyes on it, not like we're working on a system, give us time. It was just silence until there was a solution. And so that silence leaves a lot of room for speculation. Even now, as much as the announcement and the articles are saying, we understand that we need to release 3 sets a year consistently. Yeah. And that needs to be a thing.
I like that they said this is how the industry works now also. Yeah, I mean, that's so funny.
Generous.
That's so funny.
As far as I'm aware, Magic and Pokemon have been doing 4 sets a year every 3 months, at least.
It needed, yeah, for
decades.
It's been hopefully working like that for a while.
But all that to say, even though they're saying it, the proof's kind of in the pudding, right? I do believe that they're committed to doing it and interested in doing these fundamentals correctly, but I have yet to see a situation where the kind of communication that is needed when it's not happening has been happening on their end.
Now, that said, here's my prediction. I actually do think they will nail the schedule on this. I don't think they'll have any logistical issues. They've had so much time and so much pressure and so much feedback from everybody. The company has fundamentally changed. They've been through 2 head of studios since those times. The old FFG is not really what I don't consider it the same entity really in its new phase. Not worse, but certainly different. So it's much more entangled with Asmodee. It's much more a subsidiary of Asmodee. Asmodee is a logistics company, conceivably. And they're very concerned with and interested in this game being a success, that they've invested 3 years and they've done all new artwork for it, and they have a license they're probably paying a lot to have. I think there's enough people from the top all the way down that are very aware and cognizant of release dates and is this a sustainable enterprise for us, that it will get done well.
It'll happen.
I think it'll get done well. The question you got to ask is, on the other side of that, with all of those factors stacked up, is the game design and the creativity going to be on par with the old FFG? Because a lot of times the creativity infused within an organization means that I'm not great at logistics and delivering, but I can make a freaking awesome product. So if you switch the DNA to a more, it's about hitting deadlines and release dates, etc., do you also then take some away from the creative energy in the company? Sure. And we don't get the next Star Wars Destiny or the next Star Wars TCG, but we get something that's okay and it plays well.
Yeah, which, to piggyback off that for a second, the fact that they kind of have an announcement about announcing it, which is they haven't.
That's already different.
Yeah. So, well, it's like good or bad. Even the thing you were just speculating, because they've shown nothing about the game, no cards, no rules, no even basic idea of how is this going to work at all. We don't have an answer to that question. And so this is an example of like they are communicating, but they're also leaving that gap again for people to fill it in, which is fine. Like
it's work for Lorcana.
Yeah, well, works so far. We'll see if it works in the end. But the reality of, and it's a good example of, if you are going to hit that routine, it's really hard. Beyond just even printing in other countries and getting shipments and getting worldwide global releases going and all that stuff and getting licensing approval. When you stack in a potential Star Wars, Disney, Lucasfilm, I don't even know what that process looks like, but I can't imagine it's like super simple compared to doing your own IP or whatever. But then on top of that, from a design perspective, when you think about creativity and the reality of, the simpler you make the game, the easier it is to design things that don't break.
Yeah.
And also, if you're designing and you have less, and you are regimented and you're hitting these things, depends how much lead time you get. 3 years is a nice lead time to get some stuff developed. But depending on the lead time you have, how much playtesting do you get? And then are you being more conservative with what you're releasing because you don't have the band? So sometimes not having enough time means you release crazy things into the wild. Sometimes it also means you pull back too hard and things aren't as interesting because, like, well, I'm not going to put that out yet because I just don't know, is this version of Mandalorian like too much?
Yeah.
But all that to say, we have very little information about the game. We just know that FFG is making a TCG, and it's not the FFG of old. Like, this is new head of studio that we, it's been the pandemic, so we haven't seen much out of. It is Star Wars. There's also more macro going on. I think as a person, I clearly can see from my card game history here, I'm pretty into Star Wars card games. But if you just zoom out, my general interest in Star Wars is probably at an all-time low. Like post Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, post like just the various shows that Andor was great, but that are kind of dropping the ball in various ways, and like there's that kind of stuff. And on top of that, my Star Wars card game appetite is also at an all-time low because not only about the IP is it low, but I have now gone through, and I'm a unique. I don't think I'm the average. Maybe I am. I don't know.
I bet you're not the average.
But just in terms of like, I've played them all. I've done it. I've gone into it, and there's only so many times I think that you can go through that process of finding a game, loving the game, connecting with the community, and then this inevitable feeling that like it might just be a 3 to 5 year ride, which is.
But that's everything except 3 games.
Well, yeah, we are on year number 4 for Fab, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. But that's the other part of this. So we also have a very, very, very different environment than I think any other environment where Star Wars card games come out. So Decipher was on the early curve of the 90s gold rush, and it was Star Wars at like probably peak nostalgic Star Wars moments.
Was that when the re-releases were happening in the theaters? Yeah. Whew.
So
good times.
The market right now, there's a ton of games on the market, a ton of card games coming out, a ton of old card games that are successful. You also have, even beyond the big 3, you've got games like Fab that are very much in this like organized play position that are in. And then you've also got Disney Lorcana happening, right? And so you're entering a very competitive market.
You've also got Sorcery.
Sure.
So like all the Star Wars TCG players, I presume, I mean, I speak only from experience and conversations, that's a game that's way more appealing to a Star Wars TCG player than even a lighter, market competitive Star Wars TCG might be. So that's also what you got to factor too. It's like, how many Decipher fans are you pulling into this new game?
And honestly,
it's a lot about the design.
The CC, all of these games, miraculously, are still ongoing to this day.
Yeah.
And I think in the 2020, the end of the year, we saw a CCG pop. And it wasn't just Fab and the big 3. It was all the dead games too, that are honestly more popular now than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And so you have these, a lot of factors going on into this. And also, going back to their announcement, it's kind of interesting. The language is, target, who is this game for? And it seems like, and if you can pull it off, and miracles do happen. Ash's PvE is a miracle to me in that they pulled off so many different variables somehow in that game, the cooperative solo version of Ashes. But from the announcements, it's like, effectively, this is supposed to be kind of a classic card game.
Yeah.
No gimmicks.
Right? No gimmicks.
According to them.
That no gimmicks. It's a straight up addressing of Destiny, isn't it?
I think it's Destiny and the LCG, which is like we've done. This is our 3rd Star Wars card game as FFG.
Straightforward.
We had dice, and another issue with Destiny is looking back, it's like honestly, it's an expensive LCG. It was only so collectible. After playing Fab, it's like, that wasn't actually a collectible game.
They didn't have foils, did they?
No. And then the drop rate of the legendaries was 1 in 3 boxes, period.
And like guaranteed.
Yeah, so you could usually spend $400 or $500 and get a full set of a set every time. And like, not that doesn't make it collectible, but it's not collectible in a sense that like this Palpatine is collectible. It's actually
let's scroll in.
This Palpatine is collectible to this day, collectible.
Yeah.
And
hard
just
to find.
Hits different, right? Whereas like the legendary Vader, there's an equal number of those as every other legendary in that set.
Yeah.
And like it just is what it is. But you have the dice. You have it not really leaning fully into collectible. You also have one of the biggest downsides of Destiny, period, and it's insane that they launched like this. Did not have built-in limited play from the beginning. They had to release a separate starter, and they didn't do this for like 9 to 12 months after the game came out.
It does not work.
Not having draft and sealed on launch is one of the most absurd.
Yeah, it's a tragedy.
Decisions.
It's a tragedy.
Yeah, it's just a. Yeah, it's just bad.
If your game's in booster packs, it needs to have limited play. That's like out of the pack.
One of the primary reasons you have a booster pack.
Yeah.
So then you have Star Wars LCG, which had the objective set system. So they've got 2 Star Wars card games that are not just a card game. It's not like Fab or Sorcery, like where it's like you buy cards in a pack, you build a deck, and you play. There's more going on. This was an LCG.
Couldn't you argue that none of the Star Wars card games have been a straightforward card game? I mean, Decipher's TCG was insane, truly insane. The Star Wars TCG introduces dice, so now it's not really a card game according to the gimmick theory. Star Wars LCG, objective deck building, that's a gimmick, But I don't know. What does a gimmick mean in terms of a game? It's just...
I think it's just truly a collectible card game.
Are we just going to play things on the board and attack our opponent? Is that the idea?
Just cards.
Just cards.
It's you build your own deck, customizable. Yeah. I mean, just more traditional card game. Like there's something on top of each of these that's different. The dice, particularly with Destiny, and then the objective sets here.
Okay.
So technically, the LCG could have been a collectible game where you just buy booster packs and build a 50-card deck and you do your thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It's Destiny as well. Could have not had the dice. I mean, it's a totally different game.
Who knows what?
Yeah, but you could have done a Star Wars game at that point. It is not the dice. So, and the booster packs only had 5 cards in them. So, like, it doesn't even really feel like a booster pack. And again, there's like not limited play for either of these. I'm assuming Unlimited is going to have limited play. It's funny.
Maybe they're giving us a hint.
Unlimited. Unlimited.
And did they not say that it's multiplayer?
The built-in multiplayer from the start. Yeah.
So now that is a classic CCG right there. Remember the old ones used to always just hit
how
around
many
the
people
table.
Want to sit at the table? Let's do it. We got rules for it. So I don't even know where that was all heading.
You're trying to describe to me a no gimmick TCG.
I have no idea.
So you're gonna crack packs. You're gonna get all the characters you care about. You're gonna play a card game with no added peripherals, no dice, no funny business.
There's got to be tokens if I know FFG.
There won't be. No, there won't be. There can't be. It's no gimmicks. So it's just open the packs. You get maybe 3 to 4. You can draft with your friends. 6 to 8. You get a sealed format. The game plays well. It's not overly complex, let's say. And if there's more than 2 people, you can sit around a table, play multiplayer, have a beer. I mean, if you do it, it's great. There hasn't been a Star Wars card game that has ever done that.
Yeah.
Just kind of been straightforward on all the axes.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you actually roll it all the way back, the CCG is not a card game that I would recommend people starting with as a card gamer.
Yeah.
And then the TCG has dice.
Yeah.
And was almost immediately hated by the entire CCG community.
But those arenas, Zach, is so genius.
No,
it's all of Star Wars.
It's so good.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
When you actually look at the history of Star Wars card games, I do kind of get where you would arrive at the let's pitch it as the no gimmicks.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a classic card game, Star Wars style.
Yeah.
And a lot remains to be seen on whether or not the game itself is good. But I do know, if you just go look, I was reading through the comments on a Reddit thread, which take that for what it is. But the general sentiment in the community is that, again, this is the 3rd FFG Star Wars card game.
Can we caveat that by saying the general sentiment into the online talkative
That's why I said take the Reddit thread for what it is.
Or the Discord.
Or the Discords.
Yeah.
But there is a general, and it makes sense. You look at the FFG announcement about it, and they're already attacking it. This thing I'm talking about, which is general sentiment of Star Wars card games by FFG, is bridge has been burned. We'll see. Like, can they actually produce the sets a year? Can they consistently do what they're saying they're going to do? Can they actually have an organized play system that is functioning and supporting the playing of this game from the get-go? And also deliver on a great game.
Mm-hmm.
And the great game historically was the least concerned part.
Mm-hmm.
I assume the game is going to be good historically for them. It's all the other stuff.
You got the Zorninator in there, it'll at least be well balanced.
I mean, looking at the list of designers, I still assume the game is going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
That is not.
And I don't have much experience with Danny and Tyler. I just wasn't playing those games whenever they were kind of in there.
I have more actual interaction with Tyler.
Yeah.
As a player, and I would assume he was very capable of this job.
Yeah.
And it's a big job to deliver on a Star Wars card game.
Let me throw a log in the fire here just to kind of incite some conversation. Like, I was saying this in Discord last night too, in our Covenant Discord. Like, I saw a comment. I think David was saying the same thing. I think, and this is kind of most of the time true anyway, but particularly for this announcement in Star Wars and a new TCG and FFG and all of the caution and complaint and I'll never do this and I don't have any faith in FFG. I don't think that matters at all, because I think almost every one of those people is going to buy in to the first set. So easily the first set, if not the whole thing, because yeah, we can all complain about it or whatnot, but I think the passion and interest in having a successful Star Wars card game, all of us who have played all of these have always just wanted that. So I think there's as much faith and hope that they pull it off as there is that tentative, I'm protecting myself from disappointment.
Yeah.
And 99% of people who are feeling that way are going to keep following it, keep checking it out, and probably buy into it.
I do think that almost regardless of how it's handled or what the first set looks like, that there will be a lot of people that check out the game.
Yeah.
And I do not want the game to fail. I would love to see it. I would love everything that went wrong with the previous games to not go wrong this time.
Yeah.
But as a player, it's also like when these games came out, particularly the FFG ones, like when the Star Wars LCG came out, the only thing that really had my attention really at the time was like Netrunner.
Mm-hmm.
And my general Star Wars energy was high at the time. And then when Destiny came out, I don't even know what I was playing when Destiny came out.
That was the weird, I think we were actually on X-Wing. That was the weird.
I was on X-Wing.
Yeah. The weird like FFG shuffle where the new LCG would come out and there was no way an LCG player is really interested in playing a lot of them.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, do I want to switch to Conquest or keep playing Netrunner? You know, like that was kind of the vibe. And so Star Wars comes out and it's like, well, do I switch to Star Wars or keep playing Game of Thrones?
And I actually think if all the LCGs after Netrunner hadn't come out, Netrunner would have been way better for it.
Yeah, probably.
Because like I got off of Netrunner to play the LCG. And like I would have just kept playing Netrunner if that had been the thing.
Well, my bad.
But my currently as a player specifically, obviously I'm like super into Fab. And Legend Story has continued to deliver, and that's one of the best games I've ever played, like, by a mile. So, Star Wars Unlimited comes out. It might grab me, like every Star Wars game in the past has.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be fascinating. But even for my own part, the combination of, like, Star Wars energy plus also having a game that I'm actively very pleased with, it's a harder hill to climb for me as to convince me to get in on a real level. Doesn't mean I won't buy it. Doesn't mean I won't play Sealed, assuming Sealed Unlimited's around. But there is like a general. I
mean, is this the beginning of, well, or maybe midstream into exactly what it felt like in the late 90s, early 2000s, where it's like everybody is realizing that I'm like one TCG is more than enough. And you're telling me I maybe should buy in, or you're tempting me to buy into 2, maybe 3. It's like that's where our interview with Andrew Parks, designer of Nightmare Before Christmas, the most recent podcast that we did, he was saying publishers and players simultaneously, right at that moment, whenever it all came crashing down, realized that like there's only one of these that you can actually support, follow, etc. And there's 6,000 of them trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
And so naturally, 5,998 of them go away.
Can't sustain it. And that's what I was saying a couple years ago when 2020 happened and the TCGs popped. Spreadsheet says yes.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is companies are going to look at that and say, oh, TCGs are on fire. Like, this is my chance. And we've already seen in the past 12 months a ton of Kickstarter TCGs come through. Like, MetaZoo was a critical moment, I think.
Yeah.
Which is, I've never played it, so take that for what it is.
I watched a couple of how to plays, though.
From what I've seen, I do not think MetaZoo is a great game. And yet it went crazy and got crazy successful up front.
You almost would say it got crazy successful from embracing the fact that they don't care if it's a great, well-balanced, tight game or not. It's look at it. It's MetaZoo. Like,
Look at it.
just, let's get Aoki to yell about. Like, it was
Yeah.
pushing in your face that you thought the game mattered more than it actually does. People don't care as much about that than they do other things.
And it just showed how much money you can make by launching a Kickstarter on TCG or TCG on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've seen a ton of those in the past 12 to 18 months, including the most successful one today is Sorcery.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said a couple years ago, it's like, I think we'll see a wave of independent TCGs followed by the big hitters coming in.
It takes a while for them to get it through the organization.
Licensing, approvals, big companies designing and like showing off prototypes and approving things and all that stuff. And then Disney Lorcana got announced, and now Star Wars got announced. I will not be shocked if we see a Marvel collectible game, a Harry Potter collectible game.
They're too late, I think.
I don't think you're wrong. I actually think from Unlimited's perspective for Star Wars, if they had been hitting late 2024 or 2025, someone to come in and pick up the pieces of all the games that came out that will inevitably not stick around. Because there cannot be... One of the difference between now and the 90s is there's way more people playing card games.
Mm-hmm.
That helps. There can be more successful card games than 2 or 3 come out of this situation. But I do think, like, there was a list earlier this year going around of like 18 new TCGs this year.
The other thing that's, I think, notable there is that the indie TCGs in particular that are not as bound up in the system, they don't need as many players as they used to need, right? When you were releasing a new TCG, it was into this giant ecosystem where you got to get all your distributors lined up and you're taking cuts through the middlemen on your margins. And so you need to sell a lot of product. But even just with Ashes on the expandable front, on the LCG front, if you will, needs way less players than it would if it goes to retail. And some of these indie TCGs, just by really getting a tight embedded audience, can go direct or can sell in various ways, Kickstarters or Patreons that are outside of the volume needed to get the money you need through distribution systems. So it may be that some of these indies can stick around just on a smaller player base that really enjoys the content.
Yeah, and I think the technology and the manufacturing for these things has gotten way better.
Yeah.
And so the scale needed in the 90s to even hit print and the technology needed to produce the files to hit print on a card game is way more expensive than it is today.
Yeah.
And takes way more staff and way more effort and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a very different, but all that to say, if Unlimited was coming out in the kind of tail end where, various, these games come out, people get into these games, they collapse, and you kind of actually, it's kind of the push and pull between indie and big corporate situation or IPs where when you've kind of been burned by the downsides of the indies is when you see this pivot back to mass market.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point you're like over the mass market big IP and you just want something fresh. We'll see how the timing lines out on all of this, but I know this next 12 months is going to be very aggressive and very competitive, and we'll see how it all shakes out. And I hope the game's successful.
Mm-hmm. I do too, man. I would love a great Star Wars. Like, if I could get anywhere near the Star Wars TCG level of interesting, or Star Wars Destiny, I don't think anyone is ever going to touch anything that looks like the Star Wars TCG again in my lifetime.
That is, I'd love to do it though.
Even if you did, there's no way that the Asmodee FFG we want to make a straightforward Star Wars TCG would never touch anything around.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a different kind of. It's like more a role playing game than anything. But if it can get at the Destiny or the TCG level for me, I would be jacked. I mean, sure, let's go. If I could draft Star Wars or sealed Star, I would totally do that.
I would love nothing more than for an incredible Star Wars card game to come out and be successful and help reignite even my own excitement about the IP. Because for me, so much of the early days of the excitement is bound up in the games. And even the prequels, I was very fond of because there were so many card game moments associated with the Nexu and the Anakin Skywalker.
Or those battle droids. Yeah. Those battle droid squads are so awesome when you don't have the story to hold them back, basically.
Yeah. So I hope it's successful. I'm excited to try it, but
yeah, hopefully we can get
I think my general posture at this point is also just cautious optimism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if all the lessons can be applied and you can still generate a great game and use all those lessons to fix these issues you ran into, there's the potential for it to be very successful. Same with all the Star Wars shows and movies and stuff. Like I'm in the same boat of I really hope when they go back to making movies and the stuff they're doing moving forward, they learn, like even seeing Andor be so super successful.
That's what I'm saying.
I would love to see that happen.
Getting back to what's good about it.
Yeah, and there's a chance. I mean, there is a genuine opportunity to make that happen.
I mean, we went through 1, 2, and 3, 7, 8, and 9. A lot of the meandering Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian season 3. But then we did get Andor.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is the Andor of Star Wars trading card games, sign me up.
Yeah, it would be great.
Even in the darkest times, it can be done well.
Yeah.
And FFG, if I was going to place faith in somebody designing a system, the machinations inside of Fantasy Flight games
could do it.
Could be the ones to do it.
Yeah. And honestly, I think a lot of the dynamics are hopefully not at play in this realm that they would be in the Star Wars mass media show movie stuff, where you start getting the involvement of higher ups who are like, oh, we need to make with the show, as an example of Mandalorian season 3, which you cited. I think a lot of the failings there compared to like Andor are effectively someone saying we got to have Grogu. Like merchandise sales are too good, and like the show engagement is all about this interaction, as opposed to Andor, which I think was kind of just left to Tony Gilroy to do what he wanted.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know which situation we have here. We haven't talked to designers. I'd love to at some point. But is this, all right, we want a Star Wars card game that's phenomenal, go? Or is it also, it needs to be 8-year-old can play it, 35-year-old can play it. We need to focus on the OG nostalgia, and we need to do this. And here's the hoops, and like, here's the things that...
You need to be able to learn it in 5 minutes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it does seem like, at least compared to one of the issues I know the sequel directors complained about, is how much time they were given to write and do their thing. If they actually truly had 3 years of time to put into developing this thing.
Plus, what, a year until it releases?
Yeah, plus you have the designers that we know behind it. I cannot imagine that turning out, from a game design perspective, super poorly. Like, I would be really shocked if that team produces a game that we don't enjoy.
Yeah,
so
me too.
Again, it comes back down to, though, the game outside the game for publishers being hypercritical, including the marketing, the lead up, what are you showing, what does it look like, can you actually, and I think it's possible, we're still in the this is possible phase. All the negativity you're seeing on Reddit and in the discussions and the kind of I've been burnt and I'm not doing this again, can you actually pivot that? And we saw it with Destiny.
The initial show the game. The
initial Destiny reaction from the market was, it's a child's game, this game is not good, there's no depth, people don't want to play it. And I remember we posted a ton of content in between Gen Con and release that was just showing the game, because I was convinced it was phenomenal. And it was. And then people saw the game, they loved it. People bought the game, they tried it, they loved it, and then things went crazy. So I don't think you're wrong in saying that, say what you will, naysayers, people that are frustrated, look at Star Wars. If
you see the game and it's like, oh my gosh, that looks good.
Dude, Cool Vader gets previewed, it's like, what are you going to do, right? All right, well, you're telling me the guy who owns all this is not going to at least scope it out. But I will say, one thing that didn't exist previously is, for me as a player, and that's where it's like, who are you targeting? I'm super obsessed with Fab, and from a game that you're actually trying to master and compete at, that is one of the best games ever designed for that exact challenge.
From the ground up.
And as a personal player of these games, in my personal opinion, it's going to be, any game, doesn't matter the IP, it's going to be so hard to get me to switch my primary to a different game. Which is, I've never been feeling that way when a Star Wars game gets announced. I've also never been down on Star Wars when a Star Wars game came out. Like 2016, buying all the stuff and seeing all the movies and watching all the shows and like just obsessed with Star Wars. Whereas like right now, it's different.
Why don't we just get a box and draft it?
Well,
maybe we'll finally be on the same page.
That's the obvious next step. I think you're actually higher on Star Wars than ever because of Andor.
Yeah, well, that and just my favorite memories of Star Wars are the card games. Like, well over all the media stuff. That to me is like spelling out. I don't want Star Wars spelled out for me. I want Star Wars to be a series of insanely cool designs that you then tell new stories with every time. And so growing up on the Star Wars card games like we did, I thought the movies and the media, aside from the original trilogy, obviously setting the stage, but everything that came past that was like, it was just making things smaller. The card games made the world feel way bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Like when suddenly my Nate Gunray Nexu deck is like the most competitive thing in the tournament, that is way more interesting than those two characters in the prequels, right?
Yeah.
So if this new Star Wars game can give me that same sense of this is an open world that you're free to explore with characters that you didn't know about previously and that are just like minor background characters that suddenly are the focus of your deck,
yeah,
I'm in, man.
Perhaps if they can make the world feel unlimited.
Unlimited, there you go. Yeah,
you'll be happy about it. So more on this to come. We have not seen it. We have not played it. I know nothing about it other than what is publicly announced. Cautiously optimistic. Would love, absolutely love. I love a underdog / comeback story always.
Yeah.
And I think FFG being able to deliver, because everything in the past 2 years from FFG signaled this is not the kind of thing they'd be doing.
It's true.
Like pulling back from expandable games, canceling expandable. I mean, everything from Keyforge to L5R.
Consolidating their cooperative releases, getting it all in big box format. It's like, oh, Asmodee's a board game company. They're just doing board game stuff.
100%. So this is the opposite of what I expected.
Yeah.
And I wish them nothing but the best. I can't wait to try it. And we'll see.
Yeah.
We will see.
It's a long storied history here on the table. Let's get into some announcements for Covenant. I want to give everybody some opportunity since we are live. I guess this is what you do when you're live.
Yeah, we're just
questions. Any questions? Those can roll in, and we'll address those as we can. But meantime, here's some cool stuff that's happening with us. So first of all, we are going to be not streaming, not doing any amount of content unless something just bizarre happens. Over the next probably, 3 to 4 weeks, because we are tearing down the studio. So we're going to pack up all the cameras and microphones and all this stuff that's up here. And so that won't be set up. So going live will be a much more difficult thing. Recording videos will be much more difficult. The reason we're doing that is because we are moving.
Heck yeah.
And we're moving into a much bigger building, moving into a warehouse space. We have a lot of things on the horizon, a lot of problems that we've been talking about solving for a very long time that we are going to solve. And in that move, we are going to reset up the studio in the new space. It's kind of more downtown Tulsa, beautiful old building. It was an old gas station.
The property was a gas station, and then the building we're moving into is built on top of that space. I don't know. It was like it has a storied history. It's like 100 years.
A lot of hands.
Of stuff happening there.
If you're a Tulsa local, it's right next to American Solera brewery. That's fantastic.
And Cabin Boys.
So we'll be moving down there soon. That's a huge. We won't get into the specific, but it's a massive thing for us that's been in the works for a very long time. It is the in-between move between that and Covenant 3.0.
Yeah, and basic just realities. We moved into this space in 2020. Pandemic hit. We've been working for a couple years on our 3.0 concept, and we were planning on leasing a new space, building it out, and whatnot. And so pandemic hit, we didn't know when we were going to reopen, so we moved here. And this is just kind of like a office space in a decent area.
We haven't ever had a door or anything.
And we have a single front door. So like sometimes you get pallets showing up or multiple pallets, and the ops crew, honestly, huge kudos to them, tons of work. But like anytime we get a pallet of anything or multiple pallets, they basically have to tear down the pallet and bring product in manually, which is just like insane, honestly. And the studio even itself we're kind of in this small little space. And sometimes you'll hear when we're like pack outs are happening, when they try to do that, not when we're live. When we're live 4 or 5 days a week, that's really tough.
Yeah, it's impossible.
But sometimes when we're live, you'd hear like a tape gun and that kind of stuff. So we're kind of cramped in here in this little space. The way it's built right now, when we're live, we can't have the air or the heat on. And so in the summer, it gets like super hot. And then in the winter, sometimes it's like cold.
It makes for the great streams, though.
Yeah.
The suffering is really a piece of it.
Fond memories. But it is honestly a massive upgrade for us. And it is going to enable us to solve some problems, or at least attempt to solve problems we've had for a long time. But on top of that, while we were here is when we bought the land to build 3.0. And while we were working with architects to come up with that plan, by the time we got done, the cost of building that thing got out of control.
Pandemic was problematic for supply chains.
We've been, as the past 6 months, we've been trying to be very patient. We worked on a new plan to remove some of the materials that were going to take 18 to 24 months to get in. And part of this move for us as well is essentially coming to terms with splitting up. The original plans for our 3.0 store also included studio space and warehouse space and office space. And so this move lets us put all of the studio, office, warehouse space into this building, and then really focus the 3.0 building on being the best place in the world to play tabletop games. And it also is going to let us not only focus, but rein that in a little bit to hopefully mean that we're actually on the road to building that building sooner than later, because I am just so ready to have that space open.
And it's a lot closer to that build site too. That was one of the things too. So if we need to move product around, it's a lot easier to get it from warehouse to 3.0 than it would be if we were out here quite a ways away from the build site. So it's like this perfect kind of middle move where we can solve a lot of problems for 3.0. We can solve a lot of problems we have now. We can solve some problems for publishers, solve some problems for players, put a lot of things together that we've been working on the past year and a half. And boom, there it is. So we're packing things up, and we'll get moved here in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah,
I think.
And as you stated, because of the change in space and the upgrade in size of space, gives us a chance to rebuild the studio. And we have a lot of conversations going on the content side. Now that this year, so at the beginning of the year, we switched to 1 day a week of streaming, which has given us a lot more time to work on other projects. This is part of the thing that was being worked on too, like this whole move and everything going on,
and the reasons for it.
But there are a lot of things we're hoping to do from a streaming / produced content perspective that get a lot better, ideally, with this move and rebuilding the studio and stuff. So it's good. It's very positive. But as you said at the very beginning of this spiel, means there's some amount of time where we're going to kind of be down as we reassess and rebuild and move and just the logistics of all that. So
yeah. And I want to give a serious shout out to everybody, to all of you. I mean, like we're 16 years in now.
16 and a half. Yeah, we're as a company we've been driving for 6 months.
16 and a half years in, and we've gosh, it's been insane. And we've been able to kind of just incrementally get a little bit bigger, do a little bit more, have a little bit more capacity, capability, a little bit more influence. And moving into like a building the size and the scope of what we're moving into is directly on the support of everybody these past 16 and a half years. Never thought we'd be in a position to be doing anything like this. And it is just so humbling and so awesome, especially because a lot of people have been here almost literally from the beginning. I know there are still people leaving YouTube comments that talk about the spoils tutorial. They talk about the old days of getting faction packs and army packs from Monster Apocalypse. You have Terrence in the chat who was at MonCon in 2010.
Yep.
Early
MonCon 2010.
And we just couldn't do any of this, obviously, without the customers and the supporters, the viewers, all of you out there. So
and the publishers.
Yeah. And publishers just wanting trusting relationships and partnerships. Yeah. I know, just talking to Andrew at Earthborn, it's just like, can we just do something that we both love and cut out kind of all the middle pieces of that? And it's like, well, that's pretty appealing. So thanks to everybody involved, publishers, players, customers, viewers. Yeah. You guys have been great. You've been with us the whole time.
On topic, FFG was a huge part of that.
Yeah, huge.
Unbelievably huge part of that.
Steve Horvath showed up randomly in that random interview where we're doing it.
The Star Wars LCG unboxing.
And that launched an entirely different... I mean, Andrew has been so kind to us throughout his entire time at FFG. All the designers... Peterson. Christian was incredible to us. The designers were always available for us to talk to. Yeah. We came in and were able to do that. Alex Davey, Star Wars X-Wing 2nd Edition, they called us to do that. I mean, FFG has been so good to us.
That's what I was saying earlier about the turnaround, comeback story, underdog situation. Like, I have nothing but immense appreciation for FFG. So I would love to see this phase of their existence, it seemed like they were pulling back from these kind of things. Which, when I look at 2010s and just the string, I mean, they were on it was crazy. They also owned Gen Con for a long time.
They did.
Like the hype at Gen Con was
again,
FFG, and we'll see. Maybe this Gen Con is the Star Wars Unlimited spree, right? Who knows? But I would love to see them deliver and own this again. But yeah, all that to say, huge shout out to all of our partners and all of our players. It's been a crazy ride.
I'll ask you this from Bobby: do you have any kind of estimated timeline for grand opening of 3.0? What's in your head for that? I know you're a conservative guy. Ultimately, is it a year?
So
year and a half, 6 months.
My hope.
Check out the comments here.
Is that it's the power hour question.
This is a huge stream, guys. There's 310 people right now. That's like bigger than. We haven't done that. All we gotta do is put Star Wars art on the thumbnail.
It's a John Lennon reference. It's not actually bigger than Jesus. He got roasted for that.
He had thousands of people in the Loaves and Fishes series.
So in my ideal timeline, we're opening next year.
Okay.
That is the goal.
Okay.
If I and the team are working as hard as we can every day and everything we're doing, it's even the goal on the board, to get to the point where we can do that. There's a lot of things that need to happen between now and then, and there's a lot of big things going on right now linked to the move. So one day at a time, of course, but this move really does streamline and simplify and let us focus in on what that's going to be, and makes it easier to do that for every possible reason. So crossing my fingers for 2024. Should be a big year.
We need to start showing the plans. David has a question. Are we going to provide Star Wars Unlimited subscriptions? Zach, that one's for you.
Yeah, let's go. Don't know yet. Haven't played the game. Haven't talked to FFG/Asmodee about it. For us to offer a subscription, at this point, we like to work directly with the publishers, which we already work with FFG/Asmodee on Marvel Champions Arkham Horror. But there's a lot of questions to be asked about how it's going to be handled and whether or not we're going to go all in on support. But it's FFG, it's Star Wars. We're obviously going to take a look at it, and we'll see what they have to say about it and how we're feeling about it after we actually see the game.
Isaac asked, will you guys be covering Lorcana when it releases?
I assume we'll at least play it.
Yeah, I've just had kind of it's out there, and whenever it finally comes around in a way that I can check it out, I'll do it. But I haven't really been paying attention to it before then. Generally,
love Disney. The art so far looks really good. Certainly worth checking out. But that one's also just a really people asking about subscriptions for that too. I'm very curious to see how they handle the first couple of months of like supply and distribution stuff.
Yeah.
It seems like the kind of I don't know if you can print enough. I also don't know if you want to print so much that you printed enough, if that makes sense. Yeah. So could be a spicy couple of months.
We've announced where the land is on 3.0, right?
18th in Boston.
Yeah, 18th in Boston, right behind Mercury Lounge. Jamie Foster was asking that. Aaron Clark, can we get a podcast episode on the intermediate space once the move has settled? We'd love to hear how this allows you to solve some problems. Maybe after some of those solutions
are presented themselves,
we could do a retrospective.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're just more capable. So there's things in the past that we have core values here. One of them being focus, and essentially, there's a Steve Jobs quote I love to say about this, but focus being really what you're willing to say no to more than what you say yes to, and you got to say no to like 1,000 things to do the 3 or 4 things really well that you're trying to do. So. We've had to say no to a lot of things, a lot of problems, a lot of things we want to make better about tabletop games, working with publishers, or things we'd like to do for players that we aren't capable of in this tiny little space in this random retail center in Tulsa. Even just not having a bay door, like, prevents you from doing a lot of different things. So it just allows us to be more capable of a lot of different stuff that we've wanted to do, and now we're finally in a position to do it as well. And, we've been working on a new web platform for a couple of years that also makes us more capable.
It's like our Star Wars trading card game.
It really is. But there's this confluence of things happening that should make us very capable of solving a lot of the problems that we've run into and not really been in a position to do anything about.
Mm-hmm. We're not the only ones that have run into them either.
Yeah.
Publishers run into them. Players have run into them. Bronx, will there be play space at this in-between building? No, it's not going to be open to the public or like a local store in that kind of a way. Is it possible that, we do some kind of a weird event there every now and again? I don't know. Maybe. But probably not, but maybe. Aaron Clark, is there a world where you would have both the new warehouse and the 3.0 location? Yes.
So that's part of the plan. And that was a tough decision. Going back to focus, right? It's really nice to have everything located at the exact same spot. But in the end, it sort of felt like we were trying to achieve too much in the singular plan. That's part of the complexity of it and the cost of it. And so this allows us to kind of offload a lot of the needs we originally had for our entire space into this new facility, and then really focus 3.0 on being 3.0 and being phenomenal at that one thing. So it should make the actual play space way better for the people utilizing it as a play space in the end, and make it more, honestly, just rein the cost in a little bit when you're not having to factor. Each extra thing you're having to do is more like multiplying than adding.
Yeah.
So like even just as an example, finding a location for the studio that's the right size, that has the ventilation where we can get heat and air without the sound of heat and air, that also doesn't interfere with the store and the store maintenance and the preparation of the store for everything we're doing. Basic example of, we have a live stream schedule on the day that they're trying to rearrange the store in a situation for a big event happening or something like that. It just creates these complexities logistically, but then from a space perspective too, you only have so much square footage of land, or acreage of land, I guess, and square footage in the building to put that thing. And you also have various like accessibility things you've got to honor, and number of bathrooms based on square footage, and it's crazy actually what knock-on effects you have. Same with like adding a warehouse. And a warehouse needs to have a certain height, and you need to have certain security around the warehouse and stuff. Same with the offices, and you kind of keep going down.
I've had these conversations before.
Yeah,
Thank you for the comment, Moonfall. That's great. We got Jeremy's horn in the chat, by the way.
Dude, honestly, the Star Wars Unlimited, Jeremy is... I told him this, and I won't give the full extent of it, but I remember when I found out he got hired at FFG. There's no one in the world that I think deserves the opportunity to be a designer of games more. Like it's just like you can just see it, and like I'm so like the last half of Destiny was so good, and it wasn't even his, he wasn't involved in the inception of it. So I'm, if anything, so hopeful for this game, just for him to have the opportunity to make his mark in card games. Very excited to see what turns out here, honestly.
Yeah. Hodevac saying, make sure you accommodate parking. That is one of the great challenges. In fact, that's why we bought the land, and we looked at a number of buildings around town to buy. It's just no parking. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to have customers do like the $5 parking garage thing. Can't do it. So finding a piece of land allows you to kind of integrate those parking needs into the plan from the beginning. Yeah. So that was one of the reasons we did that.
If you don't have to also build a warehouse on top of your building or in your building, that frees up some space for additional parking.
Yeah, additional parking and all other things. Mr. Woodfall, what mechanics from past Star Wars games would you like to see incorporated into Unlimited? So here's the first question. Do you think this is going... There's two ways this goes, right? You have the Star Wars TCG, which is you're kind of this amorphous narrator, and you're putting units into play and characters into play, and then they're fighting, You've got this kind of vibe. Then you have the Star Wars Destiny, where you have a tighter dueling style game with very specific personalities that you're embodying. Which would you prefer?
So my preference at this point is to be playing as a specific character.
Okay.
And that, you look at Fab, you're a specific character. Destiny almost had that. Mm-hmm. You were a couple characters. But I really, I don't know the right word for it. Ethereal comes to mind. That might not be it. But like when you get to like zoom in and feel like you're the thing, mm-hmm. I really dig that. I do not think that's what's going to happen here.
I want the exact opposite.
Based on the comments, it was like characters and ships and vehicles and stuff. But I also like look at the CCG and like the just breadth of your kind of the force mm-hmm. in that scenario. The light and the dark side of the force is how that's framed. And you're pulling and pushing it like the way the universe is playing out. So either of those extremes are my favorite.
Yep.
Like, if you are the character and we're fighting and it's a dueling game, or if the universe is at play before you. But it's hard to imagine a universe at play also mass market approachable iteration.
I don't know, though.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's Magic, right? So I would much prefer I'm playing Darth Vader and Nexu and a droid, and then there's combat that happens, or there's infiltration missions, that however they want to design the system, and just be me doing it. I don't want to be Darth Vader fighting stuff.
I mean, that is my lifelong dream. So
yeah,
no, I'm just kidding. I
hope I'm not Han Solo or Leia or whatever. I hope I can play them.
Yeah.
And get their benefit.
I would actually. It would be very refreshing if the win condition was not about defeating enemies. So like Star Wars TCG, the win condition was running your opponent out of force, basically.
Yeah, it was so good.
So board presence mattered, but it also was not the win condition. So in just picturing, like, if there are objectives, or same with Star Wars LCG, it was like you're trying to blow up their objectives or get the Death Star control.
Yeah.
It was not, the board presence mattered for the achievement of the goal, but it wasn't the goal.
And that makes sense for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because the Star Wars story is not, I've got to go murder this person.
100%. It's like I've got to get the plans safe and get the Death Star plans back to someone. So the win condition is probably what I'm most interested about.
Oh, just for you, dude, if it, and they said multiplayer, what if it is this? You remember Shadowrun? Where you had the objective in the middle and then you commit teams?
Yeah.
Dude. If it's that.
Yeah, like if there's objectives on the table that people are trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Or stop people from accomplishing.
That would probably be the ideal for me.
Yeah. Honestly, as long as you can put Vader on the table and like wreak havoc, it does.
Just imagine that. Just imagine in that framework, putting Vader on the table idea. There's an objective here, and it's like Death Star room or whatever, and it's like there's some stuff there, and then the rebels commit this team to go there, and then you drop Vader and just send Vader there, and Vader murders everybody.
Yep,
that's what you want,
like
right?
he does. Yeah,
that's what you want. You want an end of Rogue One, 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, if this is on loop.
It's playing in your office right now, just looping, just Vader murdering rebel troopers.
Yeah,
it's what keeps you fresh.
Yeah, but
keeps that hair long.
Sometimes you murder the troopers and still lose.
That's true.
Because the objective is not to murder troopers.
Because those two objectives got taken, and that when you.
But I need to be able to destroy the troopers. You know.
Yeah.
That's just
I need that for me.
Yeah, for me.
That's me.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't. I've seen a lot of games do this, and it's fine. They take the best parts of old games and they put them into a new game, and that can be good. But part of the appeal of Destiny was that I felt like it was totally different than every other Star Wars game I'd played.
Yeah.
LCG was totally different than every other Star Wars game. The TCG, totally different than the CCG. Mm-hmm. So Star Wars is big. It's so big. I would love to see a game that makes use of the bigness of the universe and makes it's unlimited, right? Makes the things possible, mm-hmm. and is not so zoned in on specifics. And then that does something fresh, like mm-hmm. a great designed, fresh experience in the Star Wars universe would be my ideal scenario.
All right, here's a little lightning round. Two specific mechanics or features of past Star Wars card games that you would say, not necessarily both of them need to be present, but they would get you the most excited. I have two for you from me,
okay,
to give you the tea. The first one is the 3 separate arenas from Star Wars TCG. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I love the idea that I have a moment where space stuff's happening, a moment where ground stuff's happening, a moment where the characters are fighting, because that is the entirety of all Star Wars that we grew up with and love.
It's like zone control.
Little moments mm-hmm. of things that happen in space and then happen in ground and then happen in the characters kind of trading blows. Second one, somehow integrating planets. Just planets.
That's a really good one. The planets from the LCG are like creme de la creme.
The CCG here. Find a planet in the CCG.
You just gotta see it.
If I can go to different planets, or somehow there's different planets involved, not necessarily just like a battlefield you bring to the ground, but like
it's just Tatooine.
Golly.
Yeah, I love planets. So
that feeling of openness.
Yeah, I love that. Here's what I would say. 2 things. If I had to say 2 things, I think the tension created in the back and forth flow of Destiny
Nice.
that is the thing that I'm almost always trying to get back to in every other game I play, which is things are on the table. I do my action. It's your turn. I'm sitting with the tension of what are you going to do in response? And then you're faced with the tension of what am I going to do in response?
Yeah.
The other thing, kind of on the planet front, but different, is I love maps.
You're not getting a map in this.
It's not a map, but the idea of like...
But I love it too. I love that you love it.
The exact opposite of Destiny, which is the galactic scale. That was the thing with the CCG that was so impressive, is it gave you the scale, but I think you can get the scale without the granularity.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can have the scale of the planets and like the galaxy without the granularity of moisture farming.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow it did all of it, which is ambitious. But if you could get at the heart of the CCG without the complexity, there's magic there. Like true game design, fascination, and magic happen.
Yeah. Question of scale is a big one for this game.
Mm-hmm. Like where
zoomed in
do you...
Destiny or zoomed out
and
CCG,
how granular versus abstract are you going?
Mm-hmm. We really need to play Young Jedi. Bronze is saying that you fight over planets in Young Jedi.
I have a vast collection of Young Jedi cards.
But you could have like even these are Thrones people, right? So you have a planet. You have a 7-planet side deck, and then
like plots.
When you check out of the round, you travel, and then that determines the planet next, and then you put your planet out, and then it has an ability that
I mean, the battlefield mechanic from Destiny is one of the best.
It is.
I love that system.
It is.
But
all right, everybody. Well, hey, thanks for the chat. I'm glad.
Did we update everyone? We didn't update everything.
Thanks for joining us. What else is there?
I mean, I don't know if it matters or not, but the sorcery stuff.
Oh, we got beta back in. Yeah.
Also, you don't have to entertain me on this, but I've still yet not opened a pack of alpha sorcery. Just saying, I could just open one.
You want to open one pack of alpha right now?
On stream.
Sure, let's do it.
So we put the beta. We have beta boxes for
stream,
pre-order
right?
on the website. We'd cut that off on May 1st because we were doing early pre-order with Eric's Curiosa as kind of a measuring stick of demand on the game. Came with a promo. To be very clear, these are standard pre-orders now. So you pre-order them. Is it free shipping at 2 boxes?
Yeah.
They're mostly, like, for most of the time, they're going to be cancelable if you decide to change your mind or change your address or something. There will come a point where it's locked in, probably a couple of weeks before it actually is coming out.
Just read the product.
Tons of information on the product.
Spend a lot of time on it.
No promo, but it is guaranteed that these boxes will happen and you will get them. And the current expectation on release is still, last that we heard, September. So
September, October.
So if you want those, we had a lot of people asking. That early pre-order information was, what are you doing?
I'm just looking at this.
Yeah. Used to as information on how much to print. We were able to walk in. Huge believer in the sorcery game. Huge fan of Eric's Curiosa. So we ordered enough to make those available for people to pre-order. So
that's right.
Make it happen.
Yeah. So if you're interested in sorcery at all, we do have the beta pre-order available right now. We opened that up today after getting everything locked in from the early pre-orders and then getting all the numbers sorted out. Now we can offer the standard pre-order. Meantime, also, just look at these cards. They're beautiful. I have so many memories of this game.
Yeah.
You just have these beautiful things in space. Padme's over here. This freaking Jedi Heroes was busted.
Yep. Ground prevention on the built-in pay 2 evade 1.
This card was so good.
Yeah.
I remember just hating that.
Remember this card? This is the card.
Oh yeah, Dark Sacrifice. That was our first real busted deck that we ever built together.
I was thinking about it on the way in the other day when we were going to play this.
These guys.
The Jedi Patrol.
These guys were so good, man. Draw a card, discard.
I need to get a foil set of these. It's just such an iconic card in my brain. But you know why this was so good at the time? It was such a good play for... It occurred to me. I was like... Because I played some games at a random Star Wars or FFG Worlds against Ron Longy.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought my Dark Sacrifice deck being like, oh, it's going to be so fun. And he wiped the table with me with that Luke deck that you were playing the other day.
Oh, did he?
The Force Prevention draw. I was like, man, this is just not as powerful as I remember it being. But the reason this was so good is because Falcon's Needs was good.
Right.
And this was a way for us to destroy our own units to not get locked into the Falcon's Needs.
That's it.
Which was, if they waste resource points 4 to 6 on this one thing, locking you down, and then you're just like, oh, I'm going to destroy it. I remember it. I was like, oh, that's why it was so good. Yeah.
It was meta dependent.
That was so good. And meanwhile, if you're out there, Ron, I know you still want these. I'm not getting rid of them, though.
Also, this Elite Jedi Squad was actually the busted unit here. 3 attack with critical hit 2 for 3. Come on, man. Okay, get you a pack of Sorcery and let's get out of here.
Where is that? I just want to get a taster.
Let's go from
you know
Star
what I mean?
Wars to...
It's been eating it.
Greatest.
Yeah, I mean, it's watching you open all those packs and you just kept opening them.
I'm zoomed in, so mind where you are.
An old school fantasy card game for players with a rich imagination, tactical nerve, and an appreciation for hand-painted art.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, it's so good.
And for any of you Star Wars fans, especially old CCG fans, Star Wars CCG fans, get into Sorcery, would you? I mean, it's just a beautiful, beautiful experience. Eric, who was creative director on Path of Exile, basically, Path of Exile did to Diablo what Diablo 3 failed to do, which was keep it what it should be. And Eric fixed that problem with Path of Exile in my brain and is doing the same here. This is his answer to what Magic should have stayed, which is just beautiful. All right, hold the cards where you want to hold them. I'll make sure we get focused in on that.
All hand-painted art. Last I heard, one set a year.
Yeah.
Focused on the experience of playing and not so much the competitive side. And I just adore this game. It's got the moxie of 90s cards.
It's all hand-painted, man.
Have you seen the Dwarven Digging Team? I haven't seen those.
Nope, I don't think I have.
Allied minions occupying nearby sites have burrowing. Those are fun. Crave Golem. Look at that thing. Just taking my time for a second.
It's just gorgeous stuff.
Oh,
man.
Brian Smith. I know that name.
He did our Lightning Bolt for the early pre-orders. Yeah, just for you. You're right on there. Jason, Star Wars Unlimited is not using stills from the films. It is using all new art.
And it looks like a comic book side.
Hand-drawn comic book art. Yeah, it's like on our thumbnail is the art they're using.
Dude, Evil Presence?
What does it say?
You may summon spirits to affected sites. When you summon a spirit here, give it charge and return Evil Presence to its owner's hand.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That means it can attack immediately, right? Charge?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And move.
Oh, you got my Unland Angler, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
That's the Philip Rowland special to me.
That's right.
Anglax.
Look at that bad boy.
Gotta love the Pegasus.
Beautiful cards, man.
Dude, Barry is just creepy.
You like removal?
Yes.
Hey, kid, you like removal?
At some point.
Oh, an Iceland dog. You're getting all the cards I want. I like that.
Cave Troll.
These are all marketing cards, though. So.
Absolutely.
Well, there's a Zach Bun right
there. Yeah, there's the special. Let's see. We're still in the ordinaries. I don't know the layout of this
They were
pack.
the first. They were at the beginning.
Oh, the good stuff?
Don't you love the way it looks? Just look
Yeah,
at these cards. We'll get you one more pack.
This reminds me of Scout.
Yeah.
The Midnight Road. Wall of Air. I love the walls. That kind of stuff just is exciting to me. Minor Explosion. I'd love to see a foil.
I can show you one. I got a ton.
Yeah, I looked at one the other day. But, you know.
You want to pull
I haven't opened one yet. So, wait, the good stuff's at the start.
Let's do one more,
Hold on, I just got to look at it.
Yeah, it's all the exceptionals, and then the first three are exceptionals, and then the fourth slot is your money.
Could be unique
or whatever.
Yeah, that's where we got the Angler.
And then your foils can be anywhere, and your curios can be in the they're in the ordinary slots only.
And we have not heard
Nobody
what
knows
that
what
is
a curio is.
I assume we're gonna know when we see it.
Well, I keep thinking it's like weird. Maybe it's something in the.
Dude, it would be so. I guess we will hopefully open a curio on stream
like
when I get all my boxes in.
Like a hologram kind of.
So it's the first. How many are the good ones? The first 4.
First 3, and then the fourth one is your hit.
I'm gonna put those at the back.
Yeah,
some the kids do.
Some people do that. I don't care.
Dude, look at this pirate ship. Print that. That's a sunset.
Man, Travis, I disagree completely about Sorcery gameplay. I think the game is absolutely fantastic.
What's Travis's hot take?
Saying Sorcery is amazing until you play it, then it's just okay. I'm like, it is hitting so hard for Zach and I right now. We are playing it constantly.
I mean, we're also deep into the throwback.
Yeah, if you like 90s card games, you're going to love it. I assure you. Yeah. They did a great job cleaning up the rules, too.
Yeah. Dude, firebolts. Look at that old wizard.
Mm-hmm. That's old Jeff Easley, man.
The man, the myth, the legend.
The owner of my childhood.
He has the deed.
Mm-hmm.
He has the deed.
Got it all.
This thing is one of the creepiest cards I've ever seen.
Yeah, Dead of Night is creepy, man.
Yeah. There's the OG Lightning Bolt. I would talk up the promo, but I don't want to make people feel bad. Extinguish. This does not sound good to me.
Well, you know.
Banish all fire minions and fire auras occupying target site up to 2 steps away.
Yeah. That's fine. You have one that hits me as well.
Yeah, that's uncomfortable. Love the Pit Vipers. Lone Tower, of course. Here come the settlers. Headless Hunt? That's cool. Exceptional. It's a different kind of math when you realize that, you're actually like, these are the real cards.
Yes.
You're like, I need to get some number of these. Have you seen the Ormond Harpooners? Or Harpooneers?
Don't think so.
Tap, deal damage to a target minion above or below an adjacent water site and pull that minion to this location.
Awesome. I love harpooning.
I'm the Chaos Twister.
Look at that.
Place target minion on the back here. Oh, no, hold on. This is so good.
Dude, read it. Yeah, give it to me.
All right.
Hit me.
Place target minion on the back of your hand. Then blow it off from a height of at least 1 foot. Deal damage equal to its power to each unit atop the site it lands on, including itself.
Thank you.
That's what I mean. That's what we mean when we say Moxie.
That's incredible.
So, like, this is literally what this is. If these guys, it's like, all right, we're a foot above.
Awesome. It's awesome. You remember that old story where they had to change the air conditioning or whatever because the confetti card? Was it spoils or magic? There was a magic one and there was a spoils one too.
I think it was Magic Missile.
The homing missile.
In Star Wars.
Star Wars TCG.
So originally the rules didn't, there was a card that is like you drop it from a foot above. And anything it lands on takes 3 damage. And there were no rules about it. So someone literally mid-tournament unsleeves the card, rips it like into a confetti, and then just peppers the board with this stuff. And technically, the judge was like, it doesn't say you can't do it. Mm-hmm. Then he obviously lost the card, but there's only so many of them. Mm-hmm. But that is so perfect.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that was worth opening the packs right there.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did that.
That's awesome. Okay, so I think that's it. Let's get out of here.
All right, thank you for being here.
I'll be over at the table.
If you're on the FFG front working on Star Wars Unlimited, best of luck. If you're local to Tulsa, stay tuned to your inbox. Some changes are coming. And for everyone here who joined us, who's ever bought anything from us, who's ever smashed that like button or subscribed,
Star Wars fans.
Thank you for being here. And thank you for allowing everything we do to be possible. Really genuinely appreciated. And we're super excited about what's to come. There's a lot of stuff we're hoping to make better in the tabletop gaming industry. And hopefully we've just gotten started. So stay safe out there and we'll be back.